Welcome to the training site for DERA's environmental farming scheme. This training module is for the EFS wider level option, creation of riparian buffers 10 meters width, ungrazed. There is a short video for you to watch, and this is followed by 4 questions which you need to answer. Further details about the environmental farming scheme are available on the DERA website. This includes the information sheet for each of the options. This training module covers a number of aspects about this option, explaining what it is and why you might want to establish it, giving guidance as to where it is best established, and covering certain things that you must do as part of the scheme. It explains the type of records that need to be kept and mentions certain things that must not be done as part of the scheme. It outlines the checks that DERA will carry out and gives information about payment rates. Then finally, it covers the additional capital items and also gives some further advice which will help you to make a success of this project. Basically, this option is about erecting a stock-proof fence 10 meters on average from the top of the bank of a watercourse. The vegetation in the 2-meter width next to the watercourse is left uncut throughout the year. The vegetation in the 8-meter width next to the field is cut and removed after the 15th of July each year. This picture indicates the strip, the 2 meters uncut and the 8 meters on the field side, which is cut. An access gate of at least 4.27 meters wide must be provided for every 150 meters or part thereof of the strip. For example, 140 meters length of strip requires 1 access gate, whereas 160 meter length will require 2 access gates. Again, a diagram to explain the layout of the strip. The 2 meters nearest the watercourse remains uncut, whereas the 8 meters adjacent to the fence is cut after the 15th of July each year and the cuttings removed. The amount of the option required is the amount detailed in the agreement. This is the amount that must be done. There is a minimum length of 10 meters at any point, and the maximum length will be as per the maximum agreement value. Why might you want to establish this option? Well, it will improve water quality and reduce poaching of the banks. This will stabilise the banks of the watercourses and reduce sedimentation and the ensuing pollution. And overall, it will enhance biodiversity on your land. Where is a suitable place for the option? Well, where there are grazed grassland fields adjacent to watercourses, or where there's evidence of damage or poaching to the bank, and somewhere that there's little or no existing riparian vegetation. Also, it's suitable in places where livestock have access to a watercourse to drink or go across to another field. However, it is not suitable at breeding wader sites, as the fence and vegetation may impede young chicks' access to the watercourse. To be eligible to claim for this option, you need to follow the scheme specifications, and there are certain things that must be done. You must erect a protective fence and access gates and gate posts on the field side of the buffer by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. You must establish the claimed length in the fields where it's approved, and you must establish an average of 10 meters riparian buffer for each meter length. You must also erect the claimed length of fence on the field side of the buffer. You must use fence posts with a minimum 15-year life, and you must install a minimum of one 4.27 metre wide gate and 2 gate posts up to scheme specification for each 150 metres length of the riparian buffer. You must retain and manage the same area and location for the duration of the agreement. You must retain the buffer for 10 years after the scheme end date, and you must maintain the protective fence and access gate or gate posts in a stock-proof condition for the duration of the agreement. And finally, you must cut the vegetation in the 8 metre width next to the field after the 15th of July each year and remove the cuttings. And if your option is established under the Environmental Farming Scheme Hire, then you must establish, retain and manage the buffer as in the site-specific remedial management plan for the EFS Hire scheme. You must also keep records of the works related to the option. You must keep field level records each year for the works undertaken for this option, and also for any capital items associated with the option. You may use the format that is shown here, and this is available on the DERA website, or alternatively, you may prefer to use your own format to keep the required information. Please note that there is a separate training module on record keeping, which will give you more information on this aspect of the scheme. You also need to keep agreement level records of the 2 parts of integrated pest management as highlighted here. This means indicating, as shown here by ticking a box, that you have assessed whether there are any issues with harmful organisms or pests in the establishment or maintenance of the options in your agreement. And secondly, that you have checked and recorded what measures you have taken to protect the option from such pests. You must not cut or graze the vegetation in the 2 metre width next to the watercourse. You must not graze the 8 metres width of the riparian buffer nearest the field, and you must not apply organic or inorganic fertiliser to the strip. DERA will undertake to check what happens in the option to verify the works are completed to the required standards. The DERA checks can be of a number of types, and they can include office-based administrative checks. They can also include technologically based checks, such as control with remote sensing. Or thirdly, they could be on-site checks, such as rapid field visits or on-the-spot checks. Some of the aspects that DERA might check for your option: they may check that the erection of the protective fence and access gates and gate posts is completed by the 1st of June in year 1 of the agreement. They can check that the claimed length is created in the approved fields, and they check that a minimum of one 4.27 metre gate with 2 gate posts is established for each 150 metres or part thereof of riparian buffer established. Other checks could be that on average 10 metres length of buffer is 10 metres width of buffer is established for each length along the watercourse. They'll also check that the claimed length is erected to scheme specifications, and they'll check that the same area and location of riparian buffer is retained and managed for the duration of the agreement. They will check that the riparian buffer protective fence and access gates and gate posts are maintained in a stock-proof condition for the duration of the agreement. They'll check that the vegetation in the 2 metre width next to the watercourse is not cut or grazed during the agreement, and they'll check that the overall riparian buffer is not grazed. Other checks could be that the vegetation in the 8 metre width next to the field is cut after the 15th of July each year and the cuttings removed. They can check that everything is done as included in the site-specific remedial management plan for those with the higher scheme option. They'll check that no organic or inorganic fertilizers are applied, and they can check that field records are kept. The payment rate for this option is £7.63 per metre in year 1 and 36 pence per metre subsequently in years 2 to 5. This is the list of additional capital items available in association with this option. Only if these were added at application stage will they form part of the agreement. Where they are part of the agreement, you should complete the separate training module relating to the relevant capital item or items, and also consult the relevant capital item information sheet on the website. Some further advice which will help you to make a success of this option. Avoid having the strip in locations where watercourse banks are likely to erode. Avoid soil compaction to maximize the trapping of pollutants. And do not use the strip for vehicle access except for necessary maintenance. Other advice is that you do not cut the 8 metre strip next to the field when ground conditions are wet. You maintain the grass cover over the winter and spring when surface runoff is likely to be at its highest, and you avoid setting spoil from the watercourse on the buffer. You also should discuss and agree with the person who has control of the neighbouring land if the buffer is established along a march boundary, and you should employ good soil management in the adjacent fields to reduce runoff pressure on the buffer, improve and prolong its effectiveness, and reduce the costs of managing and repairing it. You should also establish a hedge parallel to or along the field side of the buffer, as this will enhance its effectiveness as a buffer. Also, establishing a hedge or shelter belt of woodland in the sloping fields running towards the riparian buffer will reduce the runoff reaching the buffer. Finally, certain things to do next. You should now complete the questions for this option, and these follow the video. It's essential that you successfully complete these questions so as to register that your training on this option is finished. You should also read the information sheet that relates to this option, and this is available on the lesson site. And thirdly, if you have further options or capital items in your agreement, you can take the training for them after you've completed the questions and studied the information sheet.